Let's start with the Tar Heels. Tar Heel fans are, because, we interact all the time, and if we just had started better. Like, how many games has that been this year? Maybe they just weren't that good. And did it just seem to you like they just got physically beaten by Ole Miss, or was there something else going on here?
I think to an extent. I mean, Ole Miss is it's a pretty mean older team. It's not like the sort of the biggest team, but a lot of fourth, fifth year guys, kind of a lot of former ACC guys on that roster too, with Davis and Brakefield and Padula, who hit the one big three late in the game.
How does that go? How do you go if you're Seth Trimble? Real quick, if you're Seth Trimble, how do you go under that screen?
The one guy who can shoot on the team outside of Morrell, I guess. Yeah, no, it was a huge. I mean, I was watching that game live when it happened, and I found myself saying it out loud in real time, and then when they came back from commercial and Stan Van Gundy was talking about it as well. And it wasn't great. I also would love to have known why Ian Jackson wasn't out at some of those late possessions for UNC when they needed a three-pointer.
Yeah.
He's one of maybe two to three guys on the team that can really hit a shot from out there. So I was a little head scratching, but hey man, I mean, to make it for sort of a bumpy season, for them to make it to the round of 32, they still won. How many games did they end up winning this season? 23 games. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they didn't make it to the round of 32. That was the problem. They lost to Ole Miss in the first round.
I think it's still good that they, to send RJ Davis off with he gets to win a game in the tournament.
Yeah.
And, certainly they gave Duke a ride in the ACC tournament, and I feel like UNC sort of is repositioning some of its infrastructure around the basketball program, out of this season. So I think the product there is going to start to look a little bit different. But yeah, certainly this was not the season that I had, or many people had sort of projected for them. I think ultimately the slow starts, but then even down the stretch, just some weird roster sort of rotation decisions, and then certainly just some attention to detail stuff too, with Trimble on that one Padula, dribble handoff three.
I was watching the game. I was at Jack had a soccer game on Friday, and I thought the game was over, so I turned it off. And I checked my phone, wait a second, it's a 2-point game? How did that, or maybe a 3-point game at the time? So I watched, and that's where I saw Trimble go underneath the screen. I'm like, come on. Even I know that, and I'm a dope. But look, I ultimately think that, and we realized this probably pretty early on in the season, once, you can look at a roster on paper and go, oh, they're good enough. And I think, what were they picked second in the ACC, right, behind Duke?
Yeah.
But had we watched them play and then ranked the teams, I don't think there's a chance we would have ranked them second in the league unless we thought the league was bad. Because once we watched them play, we realized, oh, wait, they don't really have a 5. They don't really have a 4. And there's still some holes, especially defensively on the perimeter.
I was still it's interesting. If you had talked to me when we probably did talk, the first week in November, ended November, I mean, they played pretty well at Kansas, and that's the second game of the season. And early on, it really looked like Cadeau and Trimble had sort of made leaps as shooters. And so my thought was well, even if you're missing sort of a interior target, which they were, and that proved to be an issue all season, I just thought they'd be able to just really be awesome with this incredible guard play, right? The 4 guards plus Powell, and then whatever production you can sort of put together from the front court. I guess I was sort of also expecting Washington to make a bit of a jump this season, maybe not as a post-up guy, but a pick and pop. And he really just never shot it this season, which was it's certainly a little disappointing. But then even after them being out in Maui, I mean, close losses to I guess the Auburn. I mean, the Auburn loss wasn't that close, I guess, but they played Auburn pretty well. Michigan State was close. I don't know if I would have been out on them even until through the middle of December, basically, because I thought they played a lot of these good opponents close. So they're like, I think they had something. They had like, to an extent, they were working on finding an identity, but it just never really all came together this season.
I think we would have been banking on their offense being more consistently good, because to me, but my thought, and I said this a long time ago, I just didn't think they'd be any good defensively. They were probably better defensively than I thought they'd be. I think they ended up being like in the 50s defensively nationally, which I think is remarkable given their lack of size.
Powell really, I think, made strides defensively for them later in the season. And I think Withers being able to sort of like be more playable offensively, that helped them to get more like length. And then I think even Lubin sort of like was decent as a rim protector this season. But not like a ferocious defense by any means.
All right, so real quick before we get to Duke, what are your thoughts on Jackson, Powell, Cadeau, I guess even Trimble going forward?
Man, I have no clue. As far as like prospects, I like, first off, I like all four of them as players. Like, I think they're all positive players. I think two of those guys are NBA prospects to an extent with Powell and with Jackson. Mm-hmm. It seems like the consensus is like a little bit higher on Jackson as a pro prospect. I tend to like Powell a little bit more. Just I preferred his size and athleticism.
Yeah, the length.
I thought his defense, he was pretty sticky, especially the final stretch of this season. But he doesn't shoot it all that well for a 6'5" 3, so there's some limitations there too. Jackson obviously can really, really shoot. But that's really kind of all he does. He really is like catch and shoot, or if he has the ball, it's going to be a step back.
Right.
So I like some of the sort of like upside with him as like a shot maker, but I wasn't entirely moved by him this season. I thought defensively he struggled, even though I think he plays pretty hard on that side of the floor. So if you're UNC, I would be trying to welcome as many of those guys back as possible. I think Trimble does a lot of positive things other than shoot. Good defender, good finisher. It really helps them in their transition game. And Cadeau, Hubert clearly has a lot of trust in him. He got to run a ton of pick and roll and initiate the offense for them this season. My guess is they're going to be trying to bring those guys back. But as far as what they're going to do, I'm sure Jackson's probably going to, test the draft. Maybe he'll test the portal, and then he could still end up back at UNC. So it feels like a lot of those guys that could go in a bunch of different directions, and maybe depending on what happens with one guy, that impacts the other, because I don't think some of those guards are particularly great fits with one another either.
Brian Geisinger is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. Split the action on Substack. Go get it. Basketball Brainiac. All right, for the Blue Devils. I guess it doesn't really matter what you run when Tyrese Proctor is 7 for 8 from 3. If he gets looks, they're obviously going in. What were your thoughts on how did they take Baylor apart like that?
Yeah, it was a lot. Pretty much everything worked for them yesterday. I think it does start with, ultimately, I don't think Baylor's defense is really that good. The team is not that deep. They're not that long. And so Baylor has to switch everything or go to this sort of wonky little matchup zones just to kind of try to get the game in the mud, but they're doing that more out of necessity than in terms of them leaning into a strength. The team's not particularly all that long, and I don't know how many plus defenders are even on the roster. I think ultimately they put together a decent defense this season, but some of that is smoke and mirrors, and Duke can make that stuff disappear pretty quickly. And so I thought Duke's secondary transition game was really good. How many times did you see, a hit, Patrick Gongba on a rim run, or really Cooper Flagg in a trail catch and go situation, or Sion James on a catch and go. So I thought Baylor's transition defense wasn't that good. I thought Duke really took advantage of that, and I think Duke did an excellent job playing with the matchups when Baylor was in man-to-man, and if they were switching, they could get Amir matched up onto Cooper Flagg, and once Amir got in foul trouble, then that's a really vulnerable matchup, right? Switched onto Cooper. The few occasions when Baylor was not switching ball screens and they were putting Amir in drop coverage, this was something that was an issue with him going back to his time at Miami. when the Hurricanes under Coach L mostly trapped with O'Meara as a 5. Like, he's just not big enough to be like a real like deterrent in drop coverage. So Duke just blew up all that stuff when Baylor tried to avoid switching yesterday. And then I thought once they got Baylor in rotation, all those guys made the extra pass. I mean, how many of those open threes did Tyrese get because Kahn or Cooper were able to kick out? And Sion missed a couple of threes yesterday that were off both great passes extra passes from Tyrese when he turned down a good shot for a great shot for Sion. Two of them were literally on one possession. So I thought that was part of it. Last thing I would say too is, one, I think Patrick Gongba, his addition has been notable. And I just thought Duke's defensive game plan for Baylor yesterday was great. They played basically drop coverage the entire game. There was some tweaks here and there, but for the most part, they were having Malawach and Gongba drop below the level of the screen. It took away the driving lanes for Edgecombe. It took away the dives for O'Meara. And Baylor really didn't have a great counterpunch. And so I just thought Duke's defensive game plan sort of set everything else up, and obviously that the offense was just was amazing too.
They shot 64% from the floor. I mean, I can't remember the last time I saw that in a college basketball game. Brian Geisinger is joining us here on the Adam Gold Show. I was going to ask you about Patrick Gongba. I guess without Malik Brown, it makes it obviously a lot easier to get Gongba minutes, but it gives them, it's just another weapon. And what did you make of Caleb Foster getting early run in that game? And I thought he was particularly effective at the point, breaking down the defense and getting inside. That surprised me because Foster has been like 9th or 10th guy, and suddenly he went way up the depth chart. Yeah,
it was fun to see he and Jeremy Roach go at it a little bit yesterday too, and to me, Caleb, feels like the last, I don't know, maybe since the UNC game in Chapel Hill, so the last 3 weeks, like it feels like he's found a little bit of his after he didn't play in the Wake Forest game and the blowout win in Cameron. Like, it does feel like he's found a little bit of a groove and some of his confidence and mojo back. I'm not sure he's been like an every game player for them. You know what I mean? Right. He wasn't great against Louisville or Georgia Tech in Charlotte, but he's been pretty good and like had like a positive impact and has helped them win some good games, beat some good opponents the last couple of weeks. So to have an extra ball handler, his like speed component, he's another guy that can really put pressure on the rim. When he had a really nice little like crossover, split, got downhill against Roach for a layup late in the game yesterday. He had right before halftime when Baylor was in their zone defense, he had a nice little catch and go where he was able to get into the gap off of a pass from James and finish in the paint. And then Gongba, I mean, like, this is no surprise. Like, he's an NBA player,
yes.
And so, like, it's been kind of a joke that they've had this guy, it's just a total luxury for them. It's like their third string center this year. But, like, and just seeing him play, I mean, what's kind of nice is, like, he and Malik have, like, obviously there's some differences. Like, he's not Malik might be the best defender in the country. He's certainly one of them, regardless of position. So, like, Duke's defensive ceiling is probably not quite as high, but Gongba, like, he's pretty active on that side of the floor. I think his mobility, his movement has looked good. His hands, like, every other game, it feels like he reaches in and gets a steal. When a guard's trying to like get attack the drop coverage. I think he's given them a little bit. He gives them a little rim protection when he's in there too. Like, his mobility, his ability to like really work on the glass. I thought his rebounding against O'Meara yesterday was good. And then the place where he and Malik Brown do overlap is that they can both pass.
Yeah.
And so when Duke gets into some of these, second unit lineups like they would with Malik throughout the season, they can run a lot of the same stuff because Pat can operate at the elbow, operate in the high post. You can pass. You can, run handoff actions through him. So he's been awesome. And like, again, I think I said this to you before, but like, it really is just like the start of things for him because next season, I know we're all focused on now and understandably so, but like Gongba, Malik Brown, Cam Boozer front court next season projects to be really, really darn good too. So, assuming, who knows where everyone ends up. But
right.
I think right now that feels like you can say with some degree of confidence that'll be the rotation. And Gongba, like the better shape he continues to get in, the more of a impactful he'll be too.
No question about that. Real quick, Tyrese Proctor, is he first round? Is he a first round pick?
I don't think so yet. But if he keeps shooting like this during the tournament, maybe he can sneak up. This is what happens every year, is that picks like 25 through 40 or so are like pretty flat. There can end up being a fair amount of movement. I think within that range. It's also like if you get to the other side of that range, though, that's when a lot of guys can go, would almost opt to be undrafted, too, right? Because in that way they can. But no, I think Tyrese he's certainly draftable. My guess is he's probably his grade is probably like mid-second round, but it's tough to ignore the 3-point shooting and just the volume that it's coming with yesterday, that it's been coming with recently. But it's just sort of thinking about what his role looks like for the NBA. And I think there's an obvious roadmap for that, which is sort of like a secondary guard, a connector, a guy that can shoot and really helps just the offense, but with ball movement and 3-point shooting and good decision making. Just those guys tend to not be first round picks.
Right.
Does that make me, does that, and especially because athletically, he's not, I've seen comps to Derek White or Andrew Nembhard with him this year, and it's he's just not the athlete that Derek White is.
Okay.
He's not the defender that Andrew Nembhard is. But that's the kind of role he'd be going for, you know? So we'll see. If they make it to the Final Four and he keeps shooting like this, maybe he is able to crack into the back end of the first round. But my guess would be he still probably has the second round grade on him. And I'm one of the deputy leaders of the Tyrese Proctor is good at basketball fan club. So I promise you, I want what's best for him. So
you have been deputized. Brian Geisinger, split the action on Substack at bguys_bird. 24/7 Sports Buzzbeat podcast everywhere. Thanks, man. I'll talk to you later.
You guys take care.
You got it. Brian Geisinger here.